IVM.
Hi,
You're
listening to IVM.
daily.
Hello and welcome to IVM Daily. I'm Swati and today my intention is to explore and understand a word which is actually much more than just a word. It's a crucial factor between two people which can be a basis of a beautiful relationship, and its absence can create unpleasant circumstances and situations. We are witnessing a specific moment in time where #MeToo has enabled so many women to come forward and share their pain, trauma, and bitter experiences of sexual harassment. So much is going on, but we need to identify significant things here, such as consent. It turns out that most of us do not actually know or understand the concept of consent in mutual relationships. What consent is and how to ask for it, specifically in sexual relationships? Well, I can't answer that question, but our own Amber Rana, lawyer and host of Know Your Kanun, can very well respond to all my queries. So, Amber, welcome to IVM Daily.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much.
Hi. So, my first and very direct question to you is, what is consent as far as sexual relationships are concerned? Is there a concrete basis or understanding for this word or not?
So consent, as we all know it in basic lingo, would only mean approval of something. But when it comes to the legal jargon of what consent would be, there are 3-4 connotations which has themselves. And we have to ensure that those are kept in mind. Consent could be a nodding yes. Consent could be a move or an action. Consent could also be interpretation of situations, but with a positive action towards the end of it. So let's say if you move towards some individual, upon that individual demanding something, that necessarily may not be the consent, but subsequently your action connects it to be, consent. Now, what has to be seen here in terms of sexual, relations between two individuals, what would tantamount to consent? And the very fine point which defines this is willingness and the attitude of the individual coupled with their actions towards the end of it. So if two individuals are sitting across and having a chat where one initiates the conversation by mentioning that he wants to get involved in a sexual way with that individual, and the answer comes out to be okay or a nod or maybe an action, but there has to be something. Interpretation of gesture would not tantamount to consent. It is debatable in the eyes of law.
Okay.
I might not have heard you, or if we made a sign, there is a sign language. If I made a sign towards you, or probably moved in a particular way, and the individual thought of it to be something different. So it's completely based on individual to individual. It has to have a motive and an action to summarize the whole activity. So consent is a thinning device. It has to be seen, and in most cases which you see of sexual violation or where harassment has happened, it is a misinterpretation between two individuals. Where one party thinks it is a consensual act and it turns out to be something different. So it is subject to interpretation coupled with action.
So does it always need to be verbal, or to put it in other words, can consent be non-verbal when it comes to intimate relationships? Does it exist non-verbal consent?
Yes. So again, coming to the point of whether could be verbal or non-verbal, it could be non-verbal. Okay, the gesture has to be coupled with an action. That's what I'm trying to say. There has to be an action to the activity. Now, if you see, again, I'll note another example here, which comes many a times to us in the courts. It is that an individual was exchanging glances with somebody who's known to them. They walked up to the individual and maybe hinted at something with a gesture. All right, that you need to do, like, are you willing to do this particular act? Which many a times happens when women face sexual harassment. That woman turning around, not replying, or maybe blinking her eyes, or maybe just smiling to it, is not consent. That may be a passive behavior to it. It has to be coupled with an action. It can be non-verbal where the actions are such, and the intentions are such that it definitely owes out to be that yes, it was an overt act. Even though it was not said out, it was not verbal, but it was an overt act which can be inferred or coupled as and as consent basically. So again, it can be non-verbal. Okay, it can also be verbal. Both the things are there, but it has to be coupled with certain intention and acts which make it feel like that, yes, this is going to happen.
So basically,
Again, I'll give you another example to, sanctify the whole scenario. If at a random party, two individuals are meeting, chatting, having conversations, and there is a very intimate connection between two individuals, and they exchange glances, they've exchanged numbers, they've sat together to the extent of, exchanging pleasantries and having drinks together, it does not mean that the individual has given consent to sexual, intimacy. What defines there is that, at that moment, when that act was supposed to happen, these are all the factors that led to it, right? What has to be seen is when that moment was there, between both the individuals, was their willingness. So this has to be established, and only gestures and verbally also only just saying it and not doing anything would not tantamount to consent.
Okay. But what if people change their mind after their initial consent? Don't you think it's a very confusing and tricky thing to understand and deal with? You see now when we look in the eye of law, the color of law as we say it, it is absolutely possible and justiciable that, initially somebody said, okay, I'm willing to do it, but at the time when it was to happen, somebody refused. So that's what I'm saying. It is not only initially what I did or what I said, it leads up to right towards the end. Yes, there is a lot of misinterpretation here, and today's generation is not able to understand the difference, and so forth, so on. It's been going on that where the individual might have just said yes initially for sexual intimacy, and then when the act was about to happen, or they were able to get involved or whatever, one of the individuals backed out of it. In that case, what has to be seen is till the ultimate act happened, there was an approval, yes, but it's not a binding one. It's one's choice. So they have definitely said a no. So that does not imply that it is an implied consent, which is, because you said it once, now you'll have to go through it. So consent is again something till towards the end of it, one has to see what are the actions. You cannot only go by initial initiations. Yes, that is definitely that both share the same intention, but it might switch at the last time. That's human behavior. Consent has to be interpreted in that sense, in the eyes of law. So is the key here is a very clear communication? Is that what we're looking at?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is a very, very clear communication coupled with action. Again, coupled with action and the motive. That is the towards, at the fag end of it, that is the most important part. It's not a contract where I verbally tell you that, okay, we are going to do this, and then you abide by it. It's something that is subject to one's individual, perspective, or how they want to be or what they would want to do. That's the right the Constitution grants us. It is that. What happens in that is, it has to be seen that, the motive right till the end of happening of the act is coupled with, those intentions and those motives, which is important. And it is not only sexual consent I'm talking about. It could also be your and my verbal conversation or doing of a particular activity, which might be non-monetary or which might be personal in nature, which I would want to look into, but towards the end of it, I might just not back out of it. Like shooting a bird, while doing a particular activity, I might say, yes, let's do it. But at the end of it, I might just deny you by saying, no, I don't want to do it. And that's my right or choice to do it. Towards the end of it, what is important is intentions coupled with action. That has to be seen. And if intentions are strong and there is about 10 to 20% also of inclination of those actions, then it tantamounts to definitely being consent.
Okay, so my last point here is, what would you say to those people who go by this idea, which to my mind Bollywood is responsible for, that ladki ki naam mein haan hoti hai? For them, time's up.
So, see, I would like to very broadly, without, making it gender specific, but also gender sensitive here, would state that, both men and women both need to realize, and I'll come to men first. What men need to realize here is, if a girl is being friendly with you or being willing to say hi, hello, or exchanging pleasantries, and vice versa also for women, if a guy is being like that, in most of the cases it does not tantamount that she's given the consent for you to do an overt act which violates her dignity. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
And similarly for women, what has to be seen towards the end of it is that where do you draw that line of consent? That is completely a personal space, but one must be aware and active of it. So while you're interpreting consent, I would recommend both the parties, and most of them know, it is just at the end of it the dispute occurs. And for those who don't know, please ensure that you have made your intentions and your actions completely explicit so the other individual knows what you really want. Don't go into the interpretive state of saying that, maybe I've exchanged a glance, yet he's interested in, and, it might not be definitely, a sexual intent altogether. It might just be a casual glance. I mean, people glance at each other all the time. People might get attracted to each other all the time. In different scenarios, in different ways. I'm just covering one portion. So that's what I would recommend to all individuals, including men, that please do not take certain action until unless the final motive and action is clear to be as interpretive of someone's consent. Always maintain that. And similarly for women, please ensure that whenever there is something of this sort, that you have very clear expression of what your definite intentions are and what your motive.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right here in saying that gender probably is not something that is applicable in this scenario, that we have to be very, very clear in our communications with each other. Thank you so much, Amber.
Thanks a lot, Bobby.
Thank you. Bye. So now that Amber has given his insights on the idea of consent and how does it look like, I think it would be helpful in making certain decisions going forward and clearing confusions, if any. On that note, it's time for me to say bye-bye, but stay tuned to us. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, IVMpodcast.com. Bye-bye.
Did you know that Parsis in Mumbai, instead of being left at the Tower of Silence after they die, are now cremated? And why? Because a cow fell sick in the early 1990s. Did you know that the smog in Delhi is caused by something that farmers in Punjab do and that there's no way to stop them? Did you know that there wasn't one gas tragedy in Bhopal, but 3? One of them was seen, but 2 were unseen. Did you know that many well-intentioned government policies hurt the people they're supposed to help? Why was demonetization a bad idea? How should GST have been implemented? Why are all our politicians so corrupt when not all of them are bad people? I'm Amit Verma, and in my weekly podcast, The Seen and the Unseen, I take a shot at answering all these questions and many more. I aim to go beyond the seen and show you the unseen effects of public policy and private action. I speak to experts on economics, political philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and constitutional law so that the insights can blow not only my mind, but also yours. The Seen and the Unseen releases every Monday. So do check out the archives and follow the show at seenunseen.in. You can also subscribe to The Seen and the Unseen on whatever podcast app you happen to prefer.
Every week comes a show where 3 people come together to tell you about stuff they like. A movie, a TV show, a book, and other stuff. Tune in every Monday on the IVM podcast app to IVM Likes. Batman approves this message. Thank you, Batman.